Did you know that Jeremy Clarkson once owned a car that was so rare that only 3 were built? When it comes to exclusive wheels, the Top Gear trio doesn't mess around. Their garages are full of unicorns on 4 wheels. Today, we're diving into the rarest gems owned by the iconic Top Gear trio. Cars so exclusive, even die-hard petrolheads might not know they exist. Buckle up, this isn't your average car list. We'll kick things off with a classic from Jeremy Clarkson, something seriously cool, the 1982 Lancia Monte Carlo. You might remember it from the final episode of the Grand Tour, One for the Road. In true Clarkson fashion, he ignored his producer's advice to go electric, and instead rolled up in a Lotus Blue, mid-engine Italian masterpiece complete with Ferrari 308 taillights, a Delta Integrale grille and headlights, and some killer matching rims. Now, the Lancia Beta Monte Carlo wasn't just some random pick. Clarkson chose it because it's the kind of oddball Italian car you just can't help but root for. Designed and built by Pininfarina, the Monte Carlo was their first car build entirely in-house. It embodied everything they stood for: elegance, purity, and innovation. Under the hood lies a 2-liter twin-cam inline-4, engineered by the legendary Aurelio Lampredi. It put out around 118 horsepower. Not exactly earth-shattering, but remember, the car only weighs about 2,138 pounds. That gave it some real zip, especially with the 5-speed manual and rear-wheel drive. It's a lightweight, balanced machine that just loves to corner. But Clarkson, being Clarkson, didn't stop there. He threw in a Recaro racing seat, ditched the leather for something racier, and slapped on an Alcantara steering wheel. Even after getting roughed up by Zimbabwe's sketchy roads, the Monte Carlo survived the trip and lives on today at Clarkson's farm in Chipping Norton. The car even made an appearance during his annual Alpha Day meetup, where it fit right in among other beautiful but temperamental Italians. Only 172 of these Series 2 right-hand drive coupes were ever made, which puts this Lancia solidly on the rare list. Combine that with its custom flair and Clarkson's stamp of madness, and you've got one of the most unique rides the Top Gear trio ever touched. Are you ready for more of the unexpected? Because if you thought this lineup was wild, wait until you see what else these men have tucked away in their garages. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Clarkson's 1973 Mercedes-Benz 600 Grosser long wheelbase is full-on presidential luxury. It's the kind of car you'd expect to see rolling up to a Cold War-era summit, windows tinted, curtains down, and a cigar-smoking dictator waving to the crowd. The 600 Grosser was Mercedes' absolute top-of-the-line executive sedan. No corners cut, no compromises, just pure unapologetic opulence. Clarkson still owns his to this day, and it remains one of the oddest, most fascinating pieces in his collection. Pop the hood and you'll find Daimler-Benz's first ever V8, a 6.3-liter fuel-injected monster putting out 250 horsepower and a walloping 369 pound-feet of torque. Back in the early 70s, that was some serious muscle for something that weighed over 6,000 pounds. This thing moved with grace thanks to a 4-speed automatic transmission and Mercedes' advanced air suspension system. Inside was a palace. Think polished wood, real leather, none of that fake stuff, and a hydraulic system that powers just about everything. Windows, seats, trunk, even the sunroof, all moved with the whisper-smooth purr of high-pressure fluid. Clarkson once joked that the only thing you couldn't operate with hydraulics was the hood. This particular version, the long wheelbase model, measured over 20 feet in length. Yeah, that's longer than most living rooms. Clarkson used it in one of the Top Gear episodes during a face-off with James May's Rolls-Royce, pointing out that the 600 was the choice of dictators and rock stars alike. But here's what really makes it rare. Only about 2,677 of the 600s were ever built, and fewer in the LWB configuration. Lastly from Jeremy is the Mitsuoka Leedi, one of the rarest and weirdest cars you'll ever see rolled out of Japan. Built on the bones of the 1990s Nissan Silvia S13, the Leedi is what happens when you take retro styling a little too seriously. Mitsuoka, a company famous, or maybe infamous, for designing cars that turn heads for all the wrong reasons, took a perfectly fine sports coupe and dressed it up like it was headed to a Gatsby-themed costume party. Underneath that long stretched hood is a 1.8-liter inline-4 engine, the same naturally aspirated CA18DE engine from the Silvia S13. That little four-banger puts out 131 horsepower and 117 pound-feet of torque, which in today's world sounds more like lawnmower numbers than anything remotely sporty. The wheelbase on this thing is comically large. The front wheels look like they're attending a different car show than the rear wheels. That's not even the funny part. When Clarkson got his hands on it for the Grand Tour Special, he swapped out the regular seats for a pair of Recaros and bolted them in permanently. Of course, this left poor Hammond unable to adjust them. The man could barely see over the dashboard, let alone handle the thing on the Abolodrome test track. Visually, the Leedi is a fever dream. Clarkson claimed it was designed to resemble the 1930s Mercedes SSK, but here's the crazy part. Mitsuoka made only 500 of these things, and they sold out in just 4 days. Step inside and you're right back in the early 90s. Despite the outrageous exterior, Mitsuoka didn't bother changing the interior at all. It's still the same bland Nissan dash, same buttons, and yes, the same steering wheel. Moving on to James May's collection, he brought his 1947 Crosley CC convertible along for a 1,400 mile across Eastern Europe during the Grand Tour's Eurocrash special. Let's start with the basics. The Crosley CC was built by Powell Crosley Jr., a Cincinnati-based industrialist who believed cars were getting way too big, even back in the 40s. He set out to build compact, fuel-efficient vehicles for the average American. It was kind of like the US version of the VW Beetle, tiny, practical, and cheap. Under the hood is a 724cc Cobra 4-cylinder engine producing a whopping 26.5 horsepower. It had less power than your average modern-day riding mower. It's paired with a 3-speed manual and sends power to the rear wheels. If you're lucky, the top speed may be 40 miles per hour on a downhill slope with a tailwind. Now, the one May picked wasn't just any Crosley. This particular one had been restored in Finland for over 21 years. It was in a museum before he pulled it out for an insane road trip. Even for James May, famously dubbed Captain Slow, this car was too slow. Only around 20,000 Crosleys were made between 1939 and 52, and most of them are long gone. Now, when you think of James May, wild probably isn't the first word that comes to mind. But back in the day, Captain Slow decided to go full throttle and ordered a Ferrari 458 Speciale.
Now, my car of the year, here it is, it's the Ferrari 458 Speciale.
It's powered by a naturally aspirated 4.5-liter V8 that cranks out a whopping 597 horsepower at a screaming 9,000 RPM. Torque is 398 pound-feet delivered at 6,000 RPM, mated to a lightning-quick 7-speed dual-clutch automatic, and the result is a 0 to 60 time of just 3 seconds flat. Its top speed is 202 miles per hour. May went bespoke with his Ferrari. We're talking about orange paint, gold wheels, silver racing stripes. When May finally decided he wanted one, the order books were closed. But instead of walking away, he called his local Ferrari dealer, who then called the factory. They agreed to build one final Speciale just for James. Driving it, May says it's like upgrading from HD to 4K. Compared to his older Ferrari F430, the Speciale is sharper, tighter, and just plain better in every way. But this dream had a bit of a nightmare twist. Just as May was patting himself on the back for scoring the ultimate Ferrari flex, Clarkson threw hands with the Top Gear producer. The show fell apart. May was out of a job, no income, still owed about $250,000 for a car he hadn't paid for. Still, he soldiered on and even went to Maranello to spec the car in person. He described the process as being inside a luxury car configurator come to life, wheels on the wall, seat options to test, swatches of leather, and Alcantara laid out on rich mahogany tables. He spent hours there, drinking in the options, knowing full well he couldn't afford any of it, yet somehow he got it. The good news is that things turned around. May, Clarkson, and Hammond signed a juicy deal with Amazon. The Speciale shot up in value, and now it's worth even more than what he paid. So yeah, that's one hell of a rare gem in the Top Gear trio's garage, last of the naturally aspirated mid-engine V8 Ferraris. James May owns a Porsche 911 Carrera S from the 997 generation. According to May, there's not a single part on this car that isn't original. We're talking OEM everything, down to the dust caps. In an age where everyone's slapping on aftermarket spoilers and dubious mods, this is rare. It's like finding a pristine vinyl record in a sea of scratched CDs. May even joked you can spend all day walking around this car if you like. You wouldn't find a single thing, not even a dust cap that's not OEM.
2010 911, it's a 997 Gen 2 C2S.
Under the rear deck lid is a naturally aspirated 3.8-liter flat-6 engine that pumps out somewhere between 355 and 385 horsepower, depending on the year and options. Torque clocks in between 295 and 310 pound-feet. It'll do 0 to 60 in 4.6 to 5 seconds, and maxes out around 190 miles per hour. That's serious speed. May's version? It's got the manual gearbox, which makes it even more special for purists, and the whole car weighs just a bit over 3,100 pounds, meaning it's light enough to feel nimble, yet solid enough to handle corners like it's glued to the pavement. No trick electronics, no digital interference, just good old-fashioned mechanical magic. He said before that he's considered selling it. After logging 28,217 miles, he figured it might be time to move on. Said it was starting to feel old-fashioned. No backup cam, no radar, no steering wheel buttons, no adaptive cruise, but in a twist of fate or maybe love, he didn't sell it. Why? Because his wife liked it. Stick around, because the next car on this list is going to make the previous ones look practically pedestrian. Now, if there's one thing James May doesn't mind being called, it's Captain Slow. But slow doesn't mean dull, especially when you're gliding down the road in a 1972 Rolls-Royce Cornish coupe. This one's been in James' collection since 2007 and comes with coachwork by none other than H.J. Mulliner Park Ward. Only 780 Series 1 coupes were ever made. It's long, nearly 17 feet, and tips the scale at about 4,960 pounds. But don't let the size fool you. Under that mile-long hood sits a 6.75-liter V8 that puts out about 220 horsepower, roughly 10% more than the standard Silver Shadow. That's enough to give this beast a top speed north of 120 miles per hour. James didn't just buy this Cornish on a whim. His love story with the car started way back in 1988. He was sitting in traffic when he let a silver gray Cornish cut in front. The lady behind the wheel gave him a wave with a silk-gloved hand. That moment stuck with him. He once said it could only have been more perfect if she'd been smoking a Soberney cigar in a Bakelite holder. But there's more. The car went head-to-head in a Top Gear showdown against Jeremy Clarkson's Mercedes 600 Grosser, and James, in typical James May fashion, declared it utterly superior in every way. Technology, performance, style, you name it. Now here's the twist. James found out he was allergic to something in the car's interior. Connolly leather maybe? Burr walnut trim? Who knows? Either way, that allergy had him considering selling the car. Yeah, it's tragic. Imagine finally owning the car of your dreams, only to have it turn on you like a fancy leather-clad cat. Moving on to Richard Hammond is his 1969 Jaguar E-Type Series 1. Sleek, seductive, and absolutely unapologetic, this pale blue roadster is a love letter to everything great about British engineering in the 60s. Long hood, short tail, wire wheels, and a growl that could shake the heavens. This one's got the 3.8-liter straight six, none of that bloated V12 nonsense they tacked on in the 70s. With 265 horsepower and 283 pound-feet of torque, it'll sprint from 0 to 60 in under 7 seconds, which back then was like light speed. Top speed? Around 150 miles per hour, which puts it in the same league as Ferraris that cost 3 times as much. But here's where it gets fun. Hammond didn't just buy this thing off the lot. The story starts when his buddy Neil was out shopping and bumped into a random guy who just so happened to have an E-Type. One chat led to another, and boom, Hammond was on his way to the guy's house, peeking through the garage at a future classic. It was originally opalescent dark blue, but now the car has been fully restored. The suspension is where the E-Type earns its stripes. The independent rear suspension was way ahead of its time. Most cars back then had solid rear axles, primitive and heavy. Not this Jag. It was nimble, balanced, and had inboard disc brakes to keep the unsprung weight low. That meant it didn't just go fast in a straight line, it danced in the corners. The front suspension? Also independent. Steering? Rack and pinion. Jaguar built this car to handle, and they engineered a bit of magic into it too. Despite all this genius, Jaguar kept it simple. The entire rear suspension setup? Only 12 bolts. No over-engineering. No fuss. Just pure distilled performance that still feels modern today. Under that long low hood of the 1968 Ford Mustang GT390 is a 390 cubic inch V8. That's 6.4 liters of Detroit muscle pushing out 265 horsepower. Sure, that's not crazy by today's standards, but back then, this thing was the definition of cool. It hits 60 miles per hour in just over 6 seconds and tops out around 130 miles per hour. Here's where it gets fun. Hammond says driving it is like sitting on a bar stool in a smoky dive, looking out through a rearview mirror as wide as a movie screen. This car is all about the feel. No traction control, no ABS, no filters. Just you, the road, and a V8 that roars louder than a NASCAR tailgate party. Interestingly, this is the same model Mustang GT that McQueen drove in Bullitt. That Highland Green beauty tearing through the hilly streets of San Francisco. Yep, same car, same engine. Back in the day, that 390 V8 cranked out 325 horsepower and 427 pound-feet of torque. This very Mustang has appreciated by over 2,200% since it rolled out of showrooms in '68. It cost just over $3,200 back then. Today, it's sitting pretty north of 74 grand. That's what happens when you star in the greatest movie chase of all time. Hammond, he kept his alive with what he calls a planet-loving sense of public spiritedness. This thing is rough and loud, probably leaks oil, and handles like a bathtub on roller skates, but man, it feels alive. If you've ever driven an old-school muscle car, you know what we're talking about. Now, while that Mustang is an all-American steel, sweat, and swagger, we'll pivot to something from the other side of the Atlantic. Lastly on our list is Richard Hammond's Porsche 911 GT3 RS. He picked up this fire breather back in 2016, delivered fresh from the factory in a custom paint-to-sample color called Grigio Campovolo. a sleek, almost military gray. Inside, lava orange Alcantara. Under the deck lid sits a 4-liter naturally aspirated flat 6. Not turbocharged, not hybrid, just pure unfiltered fury. It cranks out 500 horsepower and launches from 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. The transmission? A PDK dual clutch setup that shifts faster than your brain can keep up. Now, back in the day, people grumbled about the lack of a manual option. No clutch pedal? But Hammond wasn't buying into the drama. He said it straight. If you want to go fast, you need PDK, and he was right. The 911 GT3 RS also borrowed its widebody from the turbo, making it the first RS to wear the extra muscle. It sits low, wide, and mean. Throw in ceramic brakes, a front axle lift system for speed bumps, the Sport Chrono package, and Porsche's slick track precision app. You've got a speed demon. Driving is an experience. Steering alone is razor sharp, perfectly weighted, and communicates every pebble on the road. Michelin rubber wraps around ultralight center lock wheels and clings to the asphalt like Velcro. It's loud, it's raw, it's focused. Even after years of Porsche ownership, 997s, 911s of every flavor, this one stood out. It was precise but wild, fast but playful. You could hammer it around a track all day, then drive it home. We're not sure how long he kept it, but we do know it passed through a few lucky owners after him. Today, it's listed for around $160,000. That's a solid chunk above the original sticker price of $131,296. The Top Gear trio really knows how to flex their engines. Which car was your favorite? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more automotive deep dives. See you in the next one!